And welcome to the Draft Indy podcast. I'm Grant Sinning, and tonight I'm joined by Garrett and Brian, and Alex might be stopping by again. And last time I said that he joined right away, and I don't think that's happening this time. Our counterpart Jay is he's whipped, and he'll never ever be on a podcast again. You should all tell him how much you miss him, and see if he'll come back. He actually said to me, "I hate everyone who listens to the podcast," and they're all stupid and things along those nature. So you can tell him how you feel back to him a little later. I hope, at JV3, James Vermeil, if you want to look him up.
I think I have his address actually from his HBO Go account. But
he does loan Draft Indy the HBO Go account, which is a big plus.
So we'll keep him.
We'll keep him around, I guess.
At least until we finish everything we want to watch.
Right. Got to catch up on The Sopranos, get ready for Game of Thrones. So, all right. Well, so tonight we're going to talk about a little bit of the offense. I'm not going to do a state of the offense, kind of like we did a state of the defense. I mean, when it comes to the offense, we kind of know where we're at. I mean, we've already talked about offensive line in depth on this podcast. We know where we're at with wide receivers. Maybe they add one in the draft. Maybe they don't. Maybe they add a veteran guy, which is probably the ideal way. If not, then it's Ty, Moncrief, Dorsett, and Quan Bray. So they might add a UDFA guy or whatever. And tight end, we're pretty much set with Dwayne and Jack Doyle, minus, and maybe Eric Swoop, or they signed another guy recently. I don't know. They'd probably add a third guy there. So running back is kind of where we were thinking tonight, and right now it's kind of an interesting kind of debate because we are moving from one scheme of offense kind of to another, and they are kind of similar, but they're definitely different. I know that kind of sounds weird. Hey, Alex, how you doing?
Howdy.
So as I was saying, we're switching from one system of offense to another, and the Chudzinski is kind of based in what they'd call the Air Coryell, based on Don Corriero's air raid offense back in the day. It started out with similar principles to West Coast offense, and West Coast offense was a lot of short passes, getting the ball into your receivers early and making them gain the yards. So it was a lot of short passes, and then eventually, as that passing attack of the West Coast offense took hold, Don Coryell, the originator of the Air Coryell, really decided to take off and decided to do deep passes. And so a lot of how this new offense is going to work is going to be there's going to be a good deep passing game, but it's going to be predicated a lot based off of, from what I can tell from the interview Kevin Bowen of Colts.com did yesterday, and from just the research that I put into the Air Coryell here recently. It's a power game. It's a power running game, but they use a zone blocking scheme for the offensive line for the most part. They still will mix in some man in there, but it also heavily uses the tight end. So
they may or may not. They also may use a fullback or a tight end at fullback. So
I imagine we'll see Jack Doyle play that H-back role a lot, honestly, and because he's not too bad at fullback, and yes, they do use a fullback quite a bit. So we can get Stanley Havili back maybe.
I'm just basing this based on what I saw from Chud's offense in Carolina in 2011.
Yes, they use Tolbert a lot then, right?
Yeah, but of course you would want to because he's a very good player.
Right. So, I mean, they'll use a fullback. The tight end is heavily involved. They like a deep passing game, but it's one of those play action type offenses. I guess an offense that we can that we're used to seeing as Colts fans is that Gary Kubiak. This isn't the same offense, mind you, but the Gary Kubiak play-action game. They had a heavy running game based on a zone blocking scheme where they pounded the ball, and then eventually would go for a deep shot. That is basically what we're going to be doing, I would imagine, in this new offense. So let's think about where we're at right now when it comes to the running game. On the roster currently are Frank Gore, who is 31, I think, 32 actually. Jordan Todman, who's a fourth-year player out of Connecticut, did a stretch with Jacksonville. Robert Turbin, most recently of the Browns, I believe, but he had a pretty. I think he was drafted or signed as a undrafted free agent by the Seahawks and backed up Marshawn for a while.
Did he go to the Browns? I thought he was with the Seahawks the whole time.
No, he was with the Browns last year. They had like a three-way battle, not a battle, but a three-way committee with Turbin, Crowell, and West.
Okay.
And then
Turbin was a pretty high draft pick, if I remember correctly. I think.
Was he? Oh, really?
They took him as the heir apparent, and then they never needed him.
Let me see. Let's see if this.
Because it was him and Christy Michael. I know that they were both kind of battling to be the heir to Lynch.
He was a fourth-round pick in 2012 by the Seahawks. And then he was released last year, signed by the Browns, and then signed by the Cowboys, and then signed by us. Mm-hmm. And then also we've got draft Indy favorite Tyler Varga, who's still on the roster, and Trey Williams, a second-round player out of Texas A&M. And I'll be honest, guys, I mean, I still like Gore. I think Gore did well last year for the circumstances. I think he had close to 900 yards, I believe.
Yeah, and about another 900 called back from holding penalties.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, in those
I'm exaggerating, but it seemed every good run that he had, and it was always at the start of the game, he had at least multiple 15-yard runs taken back by penalties. I'm willing to say at least 4 to 5.
So, I think, and there was a lot of games where there were holding penalties. I think he probably would have had 1,000 yards if Luck was healthy.
How close did he get to getting 100 in a game?
He got really close at one point.
It was really close, and then they just took him out, I think.
Yeah, 3.9 average.
Last year he had where is it at? A 3.7 average, 967 yards. The closest he got was in Week 16 versus Miami against Houston in Week 5. He had 98 yards with a 4.5 average and a touchdown with a long 20.
I'm not sure what his success rate was, but I was very surprised that on tape, anyways, he looked very much still capable of somewhat long runs.
No, I agree. I actually agree with you there. I'm not
gonna not say that he was completely worn down by like week 12 or 13, but you could tell that everything was like catching up to him. But like he played really well those first at least 10 weeks, especially in the games he was playing with Luck.
And they leaned on him heavily. It was just kind of the circumstances. He had 260 rushing attempts for a 31-year-old. That's a lot. And he had 34 receptions. I don't have the target numbers here with me, but that's the most he's had in 5 years. So they used him. He got a lot of touches. I think that he actually fits this new offensive style of the power running back. It'll be interesting to see how he does with the zone. He's always been, since he was with San Francisco, he was with a man scheme with those big mauling type guys.
But he's one of the best technical runners that I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. So I believe that Frank Gore mentally is pretty much capable of anything you can ask him a running back. We're kind of past the point where we can continue to expect his body to hold up based on what we've seen in a previous season. But so I do want to draft someone this year, or maybe Turbin is enough to supplement him. I not entirely comfortable with that. The worst case scenario here is that Gore, as we've seen running backs his age do, just falls off a cliff production-wise or efficiency-wise.
Yeah.
And at which point we would have no viable backup ready, except for Turbin, who you don't really want to have to step into a starting role. So if we're going to talk about guys to draft, we can look at guys such as maybe Kenneth Dixon, for example.
Or Ezekiel Elliott.
Ezekiel Elliott.
Which would be awesome. And we've talked about it before. If he's there at 18 and they say, hey, he's the best player on the board, which actually, if he's there at 18, he actually legitimately is the best player on the board by far. Let's take him. I mean, honestly, he'd put the offense into overdrive. I mean, he really would.
Like, that's the point of the first round, is which player helps your team the most. And saying that Ezekiel Elliott at 18 doesn't help his team the most is just asinine. Like, he does more than any player. Much to a far extent, helping just his team overall.
I really do think he is at a totally different level than any other back in this class. I mean, we talk about how you can replace running back production in later rounds, but you can't replace Zeke Elliott with a later round pick.
No, I don't think you can. I mean, I don't think you could replace Zeke Elliott with, even if you were able to take, the next best back in the draft in the 7th round, you're still not going to say. You know what I mean? I still don't think that it's
not in this class. If this was 2017, then there are other guys that are close to Zeke, or maybe we'll see even better than him, because it's just a ridiculous class. But this year, I think there is a significant drop off between Zeke and whoever your number 2 guy is, whether that's Henry or I think for most people it's Henry.
But that's a good point. And obviously, I really don't know much about this, and I don't always want to pick a GM's brain about this and be like, hey, you're looking at next year's class. Are you willing to sacrifice? Colts only have 6 picks this year, so are you willing to sacrifice not having a running back drafted this year and wait for next year? Like, do GMs hold out for that? Like, I think that's something that would be fun, to pick a brain of a personnel guy to see how much they really value that.
Well, we know their attitude just from last year on best player available. If Zeke is the best player on their board when they pick and they can't trade back, they're going to take him. That's what they did with Dorsett last year.
Yeah.
And obviously we flipped out about that, especially me. But I'm kind of at the point where I'm not thinking about value. First of all, again, Zeke is kind of a totally unique player that you can't really replace with any later round picks. And second of all, I just want this offense to be fun again, and Zeke Elliott is very, very fun. So I would be not upset.
But I mean more even day 2, are you taking Jordan Howard or Kenneth Dixon, or are you waiting for Nick Chubb and Dalvin Cook? I think that's really interesting, because it really is something to consider.
Yeah. Personally, I have a list of guys that I think I said excite me this year at running back, and beyond those 5, maybe 6 guys, I'm on board for just waiting for 2016 or 2017, because in 2014 we were starting Trent Richardson and Luck was ridiculous regardless.
Right.
So the offense was number 3 in scoring. So the offense is going to be dictated by what Luck can do this year. So we're totally in the position of being able to wait for 2017 if that's what we want to do.
Yeah, well, also, we had the question last week on the reader email podcast. Do we bring back Ahmad Bradshaw? Hell yeah, why not? Run him until he gets hurt. Let him back up Gore until he gets hurt. And I still, and then I don't know. Next year's class is pretty ridiculous. Just honestly, it really is.
Yeah.
And there'll probably be guys that there's always the undrafted guy or late round guy who manages to be serviceable. And honestly, running back in with what I think that they want to do, like I said earlier, they want to do a kind of a power running game type thing. That's what Gore does. That's probably what Turbin does, honestly. But that's not. And honestly, that's probably what Ahmad Bradshaw would do if they were to decide to bring him back. But I'm not. There's honestly, besides Henry, and Jordan Howard, there's not really many power backs in this draft that really kind of excite me. There's a lot of finesse guys in this draft.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, if we're looking in this class for a running back, I think the best strategy would be to wait till next year because we all know how good that class is, and maybe take like a later round complimentary guy. Like Daniel Lasco is a guy we all like, and I'm not sure how much we like him as a feature back, but as a third down guy, I would really like him as like one of those role players who every good team seems to have.
what about? I've only watched a couple tapes on him, and he's an interesting player to me. But another day two kind of guy who's interesting is CJ Prosy.
Procise.
Procise from Notre Dame. He's kind of he's that complimentary type guy. I mean, he was a wide receiver in 2014. So, I muted you, Garrett. What were you saying?
Procise is 220 pounds though. Like he's
really?
Yes, he's big and he's strong. Like he's a specimen for a former receiver.
Yeah,
which
very.
Is probably why he made the switch in the first place. Not many 220 6-foot receivers in the NFL. I think Ty Montgomery's the only one I can think of, and a lot of people were saying he should switch to running back. But he's totally physically capable of playing between the tackles.
Yeah, no, he is capable of between the tackles, but he is also pretty good in the pass game as well.
Yes.
We were talking about maybe instead of taking a guy, early like a Zeke, you take like a complementary type guy. I don't know. I liked so another complimentary guy who he'd have to take in the early rounds is Kenneth Dixon, and so let's spend some time on Kenneth Dixon at La Tech right now. So he's one of those guys. He's interesting. He's a very good pass catcher. Mm-hmm. He's got very good hands, and he's got very good
body control.
Yes, body control. That catch in the Arkansas State game that Brian Vine the other day.
That was insane. That's like what a receiver makes, like a top-notch receiver. Like that was just incredible. I couldn't believe it.
And then I watched a game against Kent State, which their offensive line was honestly pretty dominating compared to the offensive line of La Tech. So there were a lot of small holes, but one of those things that you start to notice when you're watching a running back is he the type of guy that wears down a defense? And by the end of the game, he was really just dominating that defense. And it's interesting. He's 5'10", 215, so he can play against the tackles. But again, I still don't think that that's necessarily where we want to be, No,
yeah, he's definitely a outside the tackles. He's incredibly agile. Just his feet movements and the way he's able to switch directions so much, not only when he's between the tackles but outside, I thought was definitely his greatest asset. You can definitely see from time to time when he's running outside how well he manipulated other players, especially on defense, and going through like that. So I think he can play between the tackles, but I mean, him going outside to the sideline was definitely something fun to watch.
So where's he compared to Boom Herron in your opinion?
Well, I really like Boom Herron. I really like Boom, and that's probably the biggest. That's probably like the biggest. Like not re-signing the Colts have done, or like release that like got me the most, because I really thought he could have been a feature back. There's just something about him, so many things about him that I liked. So I think Boom is better than Kenneth Dixon. I think Boom's a little stronger than him, but Dixon's more agile. Dixon's more deceptive. I think when you get him one-on-one with a defender in his face and able to elude him and deke him out.
I think he's got that trait that Garrett talked about one time about how how running backs need to be
bishops and not rooks.
Bishops and not rooks. So and I'm going to counterpoint that because rooks have a purpose too. Like Derrick Henry is a rook, right?
Yeah, I'd like to clarify my metaphor.
No, go for it. No,
when I said rook, I was mostly referring to the way that running backs need to move laterally in the NFL. Like we talk a lot about, oh, this guy's really fast, but he doesn't have great lateral movement agility. And when we think about that, I think a lot of us are thinking about the kind of side-to-side movement that a guy like LaShawn McCoy or maybe Marshawn Lynch would make. But you really don't. Those movements aren't as necessary to getting forward in the NFL as diagonal movements, as being able to smoothly change your direction from maybe by 45 degrees or so. You don't need that 90-degree movement, or those angles rather. So because like I always say, a forward is the best direction in the NFL because that's where you get the yardage. So you don't need to go around guys so much as past them in the NFL. So that's why I like to look at a running back's footwork and his ability to take his momentum and redirect it slightly, because you can get around guys by just making subtle movements in the NFL.
Yep.
And those cuts I'd like to refer to as the Chris Berman whoop kind of cut. You know what I'm talking about? Where just that little, I don't know,
ankle breaking.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. And I think Kenneth Dixon has that down packed. He's one of those guys that we need. It's a 2-minute drill. It's a 2-minute drill. You're not gonna. Sorry, Gore. You're not gonna put Gore in there. You're gonna put this. You're gonna put the passing back in, and he would be such a good option in those types of situations because he can go out and he can catch a ball shallow and make a big play out of it. Especially if I'd say if your route concepts were more in that deeper range type thing where they're clearing out space underneath.
Yep.
And he would
destroy that.
He really would. I mean, that would be his. I think that's his ideal position in the NFL. But also on that same side, let's talk about his pass protection. Shaky at best. I think. Yeah. There was one really I should have vined it in the K-State game. I mean, he absolutely blew up this guy and like he tossed him over his back. It was pretty cool. But other than that, I mean, there's times where where a defender will, kind of use that lateral movement that we were just talking about to kind of shake him out and break his ankle type stuff, and then he's not necessarily the strongest guy. So there was a part in the Rice game I watched where the D tackle was probably 340 and just absolutely just moved him. I mean, you're not going to ask a 5'10", 215 guy to block that on a normal day. But in the NFL, there's faster guys than that, bigger, faster guys than that. So, I mean, but at the same time, his passing ability is exactly the kind of back that I think that the Colts need.
If it's third down and you want to protect Luck, you put Gore in there. If you want to throw the ball to a running back, you would put Dixon in there if you had them both on your roster.
Right. And not Turbin or Trey Williams or
Varga.
No, I mean maybe Varga. I mean I'm interested. I mean Varga got hurt, so it's unfair to I guess I mean we all liked Varga. I think it'll be interesting to see what Varga does going into camp this year. I forget what his injury was. Was it concussions?
I think it was.
I feel like that's right.
I feel like I think it was just a concussion that he couldn't shake. I could be wrong. But, it'll be interesting to see if he comes back. But, I understand if you have bad concussion, you want to take a year off. I mean, you only get one brain, right? So let's talk about a guy who would not be. I guess so. He's not a Bishop. He's a rook. That would be Indiana's Jordan Howard. I was talking about him a little bit yesterday. I think he's one of those guys that doesn't create, but he takes every inch you give him. And when he's kind of like I'm not trying to compare him to anyone here, but he's like when Derrick Henry gets moving, you don't stop him. He's kind of like that in a way, but he's not anywhere in that same league as Henry. Henry's a unique player when it comes to that regard, but Howard is one of those guys that when he gets moving forward and he gets a good north-south type lane, I think he'd be a very good back for this system.
I think I said this earlier. I think he's great for what the Colts are doing. I think it epitomizes what the runs that Frank Gore had success in 2015 and 2016. I think Jordan Howard had success with those runs in Indiana, and I think he epitomizes what Garrett said about what he just said about being able to make that slight, not even 45-degree angle turn and go from a slant, and just he's a true one-cut back. And so I think he does that a lot better than Dixon does. And what he wasn't running just north or south, he wasn't running just laterally and cutting sharp. He was kind of forming his own path there, and I think he did that great. And I think he would fit great in the Colts scheme. I like Dixon a lot better. I think Dixon offers a lot more. But if Jordan Howard's there around 3 or round 4, I think he can have the same success that Frank Gore does, especially in this type of offense with the type of blockers that the Colts have present or may have present in the future.
Yeah, I think he had, other than his left tackle, Jordan Howard was kind of stuck with some, interesting offensive linemen. That right guard was not very good. I don't remember his name, but I felt bad for him multiple times going against 3 techs on the Michigan State defense.
Mm-hmm.
And then Calhoun against that right tackle of Indiana was also very bad. So, for me, I think that he's definitely a better pass protector than Kenneth Dixon.
The one thing that I saw with Howard when he was a pass, he wasn't blocking the guy straight up, but what he did with Sudfeld, and Sudfeld's really not a mobile guy at all. Sudfeld's a duck. He kind of just pushed him and he
redirected him.
Yeah, I can't remember which. I think it was the Oklahoma. Did they play Oklahoma? I can't remember. But he redirected, and with his little block that he made, he opened up the pocket huge for Sudfeld, and Sudfeld made a great throw from that. And that's really all you're asking for from a running back is you don't have to maul the guy or pancake him right on the spot. But if you can redirect him to help your quarterback step up better, which would be hugely beneficial for Andrew Luck, then that's what you're asking for, and that's what you need from him.
And I think that's what Trent Richardson had some very good success with. The only good thing about Trent Richardson was the fact that he was a good pass blocker.
Hey, he scored a touchdown on his first carry.
Yeah, that's right. So I mean, with Howard, it's he's a very, I guess the only comp that I'd like to talk about, I suppose, is. And I got to give this to my uncle-in-law, Gary, who I know listens to our podcast, even though he's a Steeler fan. He called him light Chris Ivory, and I kind of see it. He's not as fast, and he's not nearly as violent as Ivory, and I don't think he has that balance that Ivory has. But Ivory has very good balance because Ivory can get hit and just stay up. And
I'm a big Chris Ivory fan. I love the way he runs. He is excessively violent, almost to the point where it's should I even be watching this? Is this moral? But and Howard has that strength. I think the comp works especially well after contact. I don't know if I like it so much as the way they run before contact because I think Ivory is significantly better in that regard.
Right, because he can create that room.
Yeah, he can, and that's where I have a problem with Howard because I do question his acceleration, which is my number one trait in running backs. That's what I look at before I look at vision, before I look at balance even. So I don't like Howard's ability to stay in space, as I like to think of it. And what I mean by that is, for example, people criticize Zeke Elliott because in his tape, when you watch him, it's almost like he has this little bubble of a little circle around him in which other players do not enter. He's always in space. But that's not really a criticism of his tape. It's because he's magical. He actually is so good because he's always finding space, and because of his superior athleticism, he can always get to the space. But not other running backs can't always do that. And I think especially when you got a guy like Howard, who is, I think he weighed 230 pounds at the combine, where he did not run the 40.
Yeah, he's 6 foot.
Yeah, he's 6 foot, and at his pro day, which I think was last week or a few days ago, not very long ago, so a significant amount of time after the combine, so there could have been a weight difference. I don't believe he got weighed at his pro day. He ran a 4.58. So that if he was around 230 pounds at his pro day, that's there's a certain amount of threshold of size and speed combination that I look at, which I usually use speed score for that. So if he was 230 pounds and ran a 4.58, he would have just kind of like barely passed my threshold. You can think of it as a force threshold because force is mass and acceleration. But I would imagine he was a little bit lighter at his pro day, maybe 5 pounds or more. I think when you look at him play, he looks around 225 pounds for me, not quite 230. So I think that it is enough. His lack of acceleration can be considered a true negative in his game, and because that's so important to me, that makes me very hesitant on taking him as even in day 2. But yeah, his tap balance and power and leg churning ability after contact really is undeniable, and it's pretty much a joy to watch.
Yeah,
that's kind of a boat I have to pick with Kenneth Dixon too, because he's faster, but he doesn't hit the hole the same way. Like that's something important that I almost wish Jordan Howard could do too, because he's that perfect one-cut back, and if he could, when he finds his gap, if he could hit it quicker, he'd be really good. And Kenneth Dixon just chooses not to, but with his speed, I think he can. But with Jordan Howard, that never seems like he's ever going to have enough speed to really hit the hole hard enough and take advantage of that gap or that circle or that bubble.
Well, for me, when I think of the perfect one-cut back, I do factor in acceleration a lot because when you're making that cut, that first step into your cut you need to be off to the races. And that's where, and while Howard makes that step very smoothly, shut up, Grant. Sorry. Grant's I don't think people listening to the podcast can see, but Grant just said something mean in the chat. Anyways, you can hit the hole smoothly. Now I'm paranoid about the way I'm going to phrase this. God damn it. You know what? Forget it.
I asked him how hard he hits the hole, guys, so everyone's aware.
Not
very hard. Talk about running backs.
Not very hard.
Continue, Garrett. I won't laugh.
He makes that step into his cut very smoothly, but there's just not that much burst to it. And that's why I really like guys like Lasco, who can take that step smoothly and also just gain their rate of motion while doing it. And that makes them the ideal one cut back to me. I just don't think that Howard quite has that physical potential to be a really high quality starter in the NFL.
Yeah, I would imagine his draft range is the 4th and 5th round.
I would agree with that. Yeah, that would be around where I have him.
And honestly, I'm putting Kenneth Dixon in the 3rd round. I think maybe a team is going to look for him in the 2nd, but I am not taking him before the 3rd. But then again, I don't get paid for this, so.
No, one thing that I've determined is that if it's not Zeke round 1, I really don't see anyone in round 2. I haven't watched every running back, but I just don't see any running back that I'd be happy with in the 2nd round.
I mean, even Derrick Henry, I'm not touching Derrick Henry till the 3rd. I'm not really touching
Derrick Henry would. I know James said this. Derrick Henry would not fit good with the Colts at all.
No.
Yeah, he's a playmaker, he's a baller, but the problems Jordan Howard has, Derrick Henry just has worse. And Derrick Henry has great vision. He hits pretty much. He goes to the right hole every time. And in the second level, nobody in the secondary can tackle him. But he's so just slow in his first few steps, and it's just not going to help.
Let's talk. I mean, I guess we got just a few more minutes here. We can talk about. I know most of us have watched.
Wait, do we want to get Alex's take?
Yeah, I know he's muted.
Yeah, well, Are you there, Alex? Are you just listening, or are you having some lag? I don't even know if he's here.
Whatever. Okay, go on.
Okay, sorry. We'll go on then. Yeah, I think he lagged out. Jonathan Williams from Arkansas, who Garrett wrote a wonderful article called Fancy Feet. I don't know, probably 4 months ago. He was injured last year. He got injured real early in 2015, right?
Yeah, I don't remember if it was in his first game or even before the season started. But yeah, it was very early on, which is good because that means he's had time to recover.
Yes.
But you would have liked to see that last senior season.
if he could have put together a 2015 that he put in 2014,
Yeah.
we're gonna be talking about Jonathan Williams being like a late or an early second round guy.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And he's I think honestly, like, if he's there in the third round and they take him over Howard or even say Kenneth Dixon or Henry are on the board, I'm totally cool with that. I think Jonathan Williams ends up being, if healthy, with getting his speed back and all that strength and speed and agility back, hopefully. I'd say he's probably ends up being the second best back in this class easily.
Yeah, all that stuff I talk about, acceleration, being smooth, having good footwork, and like Williams is the exemplification of that. I mean, he's almost perfect in that regard. Second, really, only to Zeke in this class as a pure runner, I think.
No,
So
I agree.
I'm kind of counting on him being a sleeper pick, maybe lasting even to the fourth round after guys like Perkins and Devontae Booker are gone, because I think he's much better than those guys. And other than him, I'm really hoping for Lasco from Cal, but those are kind of my two guys in this class. And otherwise, I'm sort of on the 2017 train.
I'm really on the 2017 train. I mean, little preview of the 2017 train. I can't even remember them all.
Dalvin Cook, Nick Chubb, Leonard Fournette, Jalen Hurd from Tennessee,
Sony Michel, also on Georgia.
Samaje Perine.
Yeah, I mean, those are just, right off the top of your head.
I think
And then Royce Freeman.
Yes.
Freeman.
Mm-hmm.
And then McCaffrey.
Oh,
Yes.
McCaffrey, of course.
You got there's so many guys. Maybe I don't know if both Alabama might have somebody. They usually do. Who knows?
Yeah, that's
And
true.
then I know him.
What's his name from Clemson?
Oh yes, Gallman, Wayne Gallman.
Yeah,
I love him.
Gallman. Gallman's good too.
Well, I think right now, when Nick Chubb got hurt, I think like my heart broke in half because I love Nick Chubb. I think he's the best, and I think I would put Dalvin over Fournette at this point. I don't know. There's something about Fournette that really throws me off.
The thing that I would like to point out, I think that pretty much everybody we just mentioned would be like the number 2 back in this class or around where Henry is. Like
or around
so it's just,
Zeke.
Some of them would be around Zeke, but I think most of them would be at least the number 2 back in this class.
Yes, I remember like a lot of them more than Henry.
So
Here's
the
a
talent
good
difference
question.
is massive, is what my point.
Here's a good question on Zeke. If we're picking 18 this year, Zeke's on the board, and this is hypothetical, Todd Gurley is on the board. Who are you picking?
This is an unhealthy Gurley still.
No, this is a healthy Gurley.
A healthy Gurley? I'm probably taking the healthy Gurley.
Brian? I see that look on his face. I know the answer.
Yeah, Zeke.
Yeah. Honestly, I think Gurley is the better runner by far. I think Elliott is the better prospect, rounded prospect.
Uh-huh.
He can catch better. He can definitely pass protect better. So that's just a hypothetical. I've seen that thrown around a lot, and I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on it.
I think this is all hypothetical because I don't think Zeke is lasting to 18 or even to 15.
I don't even know if Zeke makes it out of the top 5.
Yeah.
I think the Cowboys are his floor.
If the Cowboys take him, I mean, almost any team who takes Zeke in the top 15 is going to be murdered for it because they're overvaluing the running back position, except the Cowboys. Because if the Cowboys take Zeke Elliott, people are going to be terrified.
I think it's the Cowboys. Who do the Ravens have at running back?
Trent Richardson.
Wait, what happened to the guy from Cal? What's his name?
Justin Forsett.
Forsett. Is he still there?
He's
I think so, yeah.
30.
Yeah,
Isn't he over 30?
He was older.
I think. I think it's either Cowboys, Eagles, or Giants. Like
the Eagles traded up. The Eagles traded up, so they might want Zeke.
Playing in the NFC East next year. Let's make that clear. The Redskins are screwed. Redskins are probably going D-line the first 3 picks.
Which is something you should do anyways in this class.
Javoris Allen.
Buck Allen?
Lorenzo. Yeah, Buck Allen.
Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo Taliaferro.
Lorenzo played really well last year.
And so did Buck. So I'm not sure if I'm seeing them take Zeke.
Rams took Todd Gurley and Trey Mason, though.
That's true.
I think the Cowboys are going to go maybe with a guy in the second or third round, and I think the Eagles, just because they traded up to I think number 8, I think that's because they wanted a certain guy, and the certain guy in this case is probably Zeke Elliott.
Yeah, I don't think
he might be the best player in the class.
I think if we look at it if we wanted to look at it like a GM should look at it, this defensive class is pretty decent, right? So, and we need defense more than we need a running back at this point.
Yeah.
We need a draft. I think we wait. Or if we grab someone late, that's cool too, I suppose. But I think those first three picks could honestly be defense, interior offensive line, defense. I mean,
another guy I wanted to bring up before talking running backs, I know I really seem to be the only person talking about him, is Matt Days, the running back from North Carolina State. I saw him a lot while watching Jacoby Brissett, not only over the summer, but rewatching Brissett again after all of his games. And Matt Days, I just haven't heard anyone talk about him. And the guy is really solid. Like, when Jacoby Brissett was sprinting, well, not even sprinting, when he was doing all of his chaotic things within the pocket and looking for any outlet that he could with his offensive line, like, Days was there, and he's just a great pass catcher. He's extremely agile, and I think his burst is really good. I think he's a late day 3 guy, but if the Colts take Matt Days 7th round, I just think that's someone that more people should be looking out for. I don't know if he has any film on Draft Breakdown or YouTube or games, but like if you just watch North Carolina State games, like he pops off on film.
I need to log off now, guys. I'll see you later.
Yeah, we're pretty much done anyways. So, consensus is here. Let's wrap it up. Kenneth Dixon, he's okay.
Yeah.
Jordan Howard, he's okay too.
Kenneth Dixon's a little too lateral. Doesn't really work well between the tackles. Right. Jordan Howard's a great one cutback. Just doesn't have enough burst to hit the hole hard enough. I don't know. They both have big flaws.
They both have big flaws, but they both have their strengths as well.
Yep.
I'm not buying the hype on Kenneth Dixon. In my opinion, he's been hyped up to an early second round type guy. I don't see it. Then again, I'll be honest, everybody. I don't watch a whole lot of running backs.
That's why we have Garrett. That's what we pay him for.
That's why we have Garrett. But I do try to watch 10. I try to make a minimum of 10 every year of every position except quarterback, because honestly, quarterback is fun to watch. I'm not a good evaluator of it, and that's my area. I probably could get better at it, but honestly, I just don't enjoy it. And tight end.
The big bucks.
So what? That's what. Yeah, that's
the big bucks to do backup quarterback.
And we pay Alex the big bucks for everything. And then Jay's here for the HBO account. And on that note, we will see you guys next week. Oh, and next week maybe we have a special guest. I'm not going to say who it is. We might have a special guest.
Very special guest, and we hope he can make it. I think he's listening live. He said he was. And no, it's not Kyle. But there's 3 weeks into the draft. Lots of planning coming up here.
We've got a lot of planned. We got a lot of planned content coming out. You're gonna start seeing. We've done a lot of individual write-ups through this draft process. What you're gonna start seeing kind of coming out now is we'll still have a couple individual write-ups. I'm personally working on a top 10 interior O-line piece, and I think it's probably just gonna be top 5 centers and top 5 guards. And I know Jay is working on a top 12 day 2 defensive line piece, and I think Alex has something in the works too.
I'll have a massive piece on Jason Spriggs coming out.
Yes, and then we're going to try and finish up the rest of those position groups. Probably the main position groups. Hopefully we'll get something on cornerbacks. We'll have something on defensive line, interior OL. Maybe one of us will bite the bullet and go for outside linebackers, and another one will go for safeties. But we probably won't have anything on wide receivers. We probably won't have anything on running backs. Sorry. But we will see. We're trying to get out as much as we possibly can. I know there's like 6 of us now, but at the same time, college, work, life, more important than the draft, until the day of the draft, which, that consumes all. So on that note, again, Jay, you're only here for the HBO Go account, and everybody will see you next week.